Welcome back to another episode of WarDice. I know that we've been gone a long time, but we are back. We didn't forget about you. I'm Gonzo,
And I'm John from War Budgies.
and we have been super busy since Warfare Weekend. Things have kind of exploded, not only for us and the convention and everything that's been going on, but I've been helping out Privateer Press with a bunch of stuff. I've been working with Privateer Press on a bunch of projects and getting things going. And of course, my good friend John is just, he is awesome. And I'm very proud and very excited for your next steps with Privateer Press.
Thank you. It's been very exciting in a frantic, hectic sort of way, which is, how we like it.
Yeah, I mean, something we need to preface that you are working on a lot of projects that have to be kept secret, so on and so forth, and so there will be times when we cannot talk about things or you cannot talk about certain things, which we will try to keep everything's cool because we like what you're doing, and it's been pretty awesome to see and hear that. I'm like super excited for you.
I'm excited too. I'll try to, if I have to say something clever, I'll wink at the microphone.
Okay, just wink at the microphone. Okay. For people who don't know, John is going to be working on a lot of stuff for Warcaster, and whenever he was doing stuff with War Budgies, I was watching him and getting his stuff up and going. I was like, this guy's got some shit going. He knows what he's talking about. He likes to have a good time. He likes to write stuff. He likes to do things for the community, and when Privateer Press started taking notice, I also nudged them too. I'm like, you got to listen to this guy. This guy knows what he's doing, and introducing and saying, hey, contact John, talk to this guy. And I'm glad that you're getting to do more stuff. I mean, one thing Privateer Press has always been is they always like community people. They like the community. They like hanging out with the people that make their game fun. And you 100% did it, and you are now reaping the rewards of your hard work.
Yep. So, for those of you that haven't heard, Matt Wilson actually filled us in not too long ago on a Primecast. But the big topics we're working on for Warcaster is we've got organized play is coming this year, which we're writing. Some league play for the stores, what that is. And then we're also moving forward on the 2 armies that have been teased so far. We've seen a lot of concept art for the Lost Legion, and Mystery Army number 6 is coming as well. So there's a lot coming down the line for Warcaster. It's a really exciting time to be part of this game.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I know people are kind of worried with because Mark IV is kind of taking over their little their airwaves a bit, but there's still plenty of stuff planned for Warcaster. When I spoke to Matt Wilson about it, I told him that while I do love my War Machine, I really love Warcaster. I think it's one of their best rule sets they've ever written, and I think it's one of the best games, and it's so quick and easy. And of course, it's sci-fi, and who doesn't like, sci-fi?
Yep.
Type thing. So for today's episode, we are going to do a little bit different. We know we were going to talk about scenarios, but we're going to talk about some other stuff. And on this episode, we're going to talk about narrative events and go over 2 scenarios that are in the book that you possibly can see at a convention or a tournament and kind of give the ins and outs. And since, I'm more the competitive scene, it's not that I don't like narratives. I love narrative games. I just always, when I look at a narrative game, I go, oh, this can be broken really quickly. So please fix this because I know what you want to do. So please, fix this so it is workable and gets what you want into it. Now, John, you're the narrative guy. Table's all yours, man. Go for it.
Yeah, so I can ramble about narrative stuff all day long, but we've only got about an hour for the show.
What?
Narrative is one of those things, it's really near to my heart because it was how I was introduced to the hobby about 20 years ago. And it was just this whole idea of not looking at the game as a game of numbers against numbers, but looking at it as this is the setting for a story. And it's always been how I've approached the game. So part of what that is it means I'm not as familiar with all of the balance and the statistics and how things work together as, say, you are, Gonzo. Like, you know that stuff a lot better because you think about that stuff. If you watch Jericho Reach, you already know I don't actually think about what I do. I just do it. but that's kind of how the narrative thing goes. It's about telling a story, and when you're making that, you're trying to translate that into an event or a scenario or a battle report or whatever. There's a few things you want to think about in terms of how you present it. So the biggest thing that I like to tell people who ask me, like, how do you start doing a narrative campaign? You got to start with the feel of it. So what is the story you're trying to tell? How do you want the players to feel when they're playing it? Do you want it to be like a claustrophobic, like frantic knife fight? Do you want to be like fighting over like a King of the Hill thing or a Last Stand and all that? You got to figure out what is the story that you're trying to tell with the scenario. And that is probably the hardest part of the whole process, is just what kind of story do I have? How is that going to translate into the tabletop?
Yeah, I mean, when we say narrative and stuff, we're not talking that this is any less important or any less fun or any less competitive as a competitive scenario. This is just not your standard, and you don't know what to. You're coming in almost kind of blind.
Yeah.
Type thing, and so coming from a background of competitive play, you know that you're going to be. You know exactly what your scenario is going to be. There's no randomness. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's here's step A to step B, and that's it. With narratives, there's always, some weird type of mechanic or weird type of rules, or you have different setups. Like, the defender setting up on the right-hand side instead of across from each other, or I am limited by how many points I'm allowed to take based on whatever army I'm playing, or attacker defender type thing. And there's some good randomness to it. But one of the things I think is always good about narrative scenarios and such is roll each round to see what happens and how screwed you're going to be. AKA, you're playing in a snowstorm and you roll a d6 on 5 and 6. All your line of sight is reduced to 8 inches, which, screws a player over if you're in the mindset that I'm here to win this game.
Yeah, it's not necessarily balance. It's willing to sacrifice some balance to put a little fun element into the game.
Correct, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people, we think about when we go to a convention or we go to things that it's all about the winning, and really, even though we all love to win, don't get me wrong, we always remember that one good story or that one cool thing that happened, and it usually is never, I planned out this move seven turns or 7 activations ahead, and I had a 0.02% chance to win, and I got it off. What people remember is I drug this model off of a 4-story building, and he fell flat and died, but my opponent was able to slip in the back due to teleportations and then smash the crap out of him. It's stuff like that people really remember.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I find it works incredibly well for demo games, because a new player who doesn't necessarily understand all the intricacies of how the rules and models interact, they can walk away remembering that they had a fight on a bridge and like threw the enemy warjack off or harpooned someone from a tower and all that. That's easy to understand because it's in this inherently like cinematic kind of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, it is fun. There's Adepticon. One of my favorite memories was an individual had a warjack on this. I think it was like over a foot tall structure, and I used a card to yank him off. And we had to ask the TO how this worked. It was like, do you yank him off and then he falls down? Does he move the distance and then fall, or does he fall immediately and then gets yanked the distance? And, that was just, a question. But I remember the player looking up at me and going, God damn it. I'm like, well, that's kind of the cool part of this game is, I'm going to yank you off. You're going to take damage.
Yeah.
Where you land is a whole different story.
And things like that, like it's just doing fun stuff and not worrying about the game.
No. I mean, when we all originally started, because, hey, this is really cool. Mm-hmm. And we evolve on, the game, and we go, oh, there's more tournaments being played. And, I think Warcaster does a lot of cool scenarios that are more narrative in nature than your typical steamroller packet, which is cool. And I think that's really what makes Warcaster a dynamic game, is because yes, you have all these scenarios, but you're not planning this army. This list can only attack this scenario objective type thing, and so with narrative ones with Warcaster, it works out great.
Yeah, I think that's a great word to use, dynamic.
Yeah, and sure, there's a little bit of story, but there's still mechanics that have to work. One of the things about some scenarios, and you and I have talked about is this sounds really cool, but I can break this in 1A. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want someone to be able to break the entire scenario and players not be able to play the game.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to hit, too, because on the one hand, you want to allow a whole lot of agency and freedom for people to essentially almost RP or role play out how their army would act, but you don't want to cripple someone and make them lose the game based on just how the scenario was written.
Correct, and that's like the very delicate balance of writing a more narrative scenario than anything else. Because even though you go into it going, hey, I'm going to play this cool story, you're always going to have somebody or a group of people that are like, oh, this scenario is broken, I broke it in 1A, and then they move on.
Yeah.
While it is true that they can do that, and possibly that's what's going to happen, that's not the intention of the scenario. Right. The intention of the scenario is to play a game over so many rounds, and your actions dictate who wins the scenario.
And maybe have a good time while you're doing it and stuff.
What? Have a good time? What the hell? Okay, so I guess.
That brings me to one of my favorite topics when it comes to narrative stuff is asymmetric objectives. They are, I think, the most fun part about narrative campaigns, and they are the hardest freaking thing to balance.
Yeah.
Because and Warcaster, a lot of the basic scenarios, and War Machine as well, is very much of, okay, here's the points in the map, here's two sides, they're mostly even, the starting even sides are trying to do the same thing. And those are easy to balance because they're symmetric. Everyone's doing the same thing. If you want to flip it around, if you want one army to be sabotaging a ship while the other army is trying to work on a console and all that, it gets really weird really fast because it can be easier, and it's almost undoubtedly easier to do one objective than the other one.
Correct.
And that's where things get tricky.
Yeah, and that's one of the hard balancing, because if player A all they have to do is a couple of things, what's player B going to be doing? Are they just killing your models, or are they stopping? Are they counter-intuiting, to what player A is doing? Like they're resetting the alarms or turning off stuff or turning on things. That way it's just not player A, I got a fast unit, sit here, do something, tick, 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 and just wait. While player B is just like, I shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot.
Yeah. On the other hand, if player A has a task as part of the scenario, player B has their task in the scenario, what's the incentive for them to fight each other? Like,
correct.
Why is this a battle now?
Yeah. And that's the thing is, you don't want a scenario where all you're doing is player A and player B does something, because they're going to ignore each other.
Yeah.
For the most part. And you don't want players just ignoring each other just to get the objective done. You want them to fight it out, throw spells, do whatever to stop each player from doing stuff. And that's like the really delicate balance in
It's tough, yeah.
I know that like there was one scenario that I was playing at Adepticon. Pretty much it was grab the bad guys, run away with the grab the civilians and run away with the civilians back into another one, in another zone, and you had to control the zone. So of course I stuck one model over there, and then used my vehicle to run everything back and forth. And it was like my opponent just couldn't stop me, and I was like, "Yeah, you're right. You can't. I'm faster, quicker, and I can move back and forth." Especially with my cards, taking off activation tokens and just flipping, and I'm moving this model. I'm picking up, and then the next turn I'm in my deployment zone, and I've already got another unit there ready to pick someone up. So I'm just doing a train, and he's like, I just can't catch you because you're so fast. I'm like, yeah, and I go, and I talked to the TO, and I was like, this is not a good scenario for what you're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that people need to understand. There is nothing wrong with going to a TO or going to a developer or to anybody and say, hey, this is a problem we're seeing with the scenario. I know what you're trying to do, but
Hmm.
it's not working.
Yeah, live feedback is the best.
Yeah, and let's put it right. Good constructive feedback is better than this scenario sucks. Fuck you. Come on, guys. We're adults. Oh, most of us are. But if you want to see the change, as I say, be the change. Give good feedback saying, this is the reason why I think this scenario is not good for XYZ. And this is the reason. Here's something I would change. And it
Hmm.
has to be something that's changed for the betterment of the system and the scenario, not for the betterment of your army.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you the worst feedback I can get when it comes to a narrative scenario is when the player's saying, like, I didn't have fun with this. I'm completely okay if someone's like, hey, man, I got my butt beat. I got completely smashed here and I lost horribly, but I had an amazing time. And I've had some of those scenarios. I've actually built some of those scenarios. And it's really rewarding when someone says, hey, this would have been a complete feels bad, but I loved how things went. I loved the scenario and the setup, and I had fun.
Yeah,
But if someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I played this narrative scenario and it wasn't fun, then that defeats the whole point.
correct. Because even if you're supposed to be playing a game, you're supposed to be having fun while you play the game.
Yeah,
I mean, there are plenty of games that I've done where I've lost, but I had a blast because it was fun to play.
absolutely.
But going in a narrative scenario and I walk in and my opponent stops me from doing anything before I even get to roll dice is not
It's kind
what
of a feels
we're.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I says, give constructive criticisms on things that you see. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scene that nobody sees that you can just go, oh, okay, they're working on this. Oh, thanks for this information. We will add it to our next topic meeting discussion, blah, 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 and maybe it'll get changed.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, like I says, you message Jonathan on anything, he'll be like, okay, but if you send him explicitive, fuck you, you suck, he's just going to file 13 that shit. I would. I wouldn't care. If someone were cussing me out, I would just like, don't care what you say.
It basically, what it turns into at my end is it turns into a tick in an Excel document where it just says player did not enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's all I can get out of that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, more of the story there. Narrative scenarios, very, very fun, very tricky to balance because, yeah, there's just so much to take into account while also still trying to tell something that's not just a little symmetric, fair, you know, fairly balanced scenario. But you're inherently imbalancing it,
Correct.
and you're just trying to do that in a fun way, and that's really tricky. It's really rewarding, but it's very tricky.
Especially when you're the person at the disadvantage and you still pull off the win. It is so rewarding. You're like,
Oh
hell yeah.
yeah, you are the 300 or whatever, and you
Yeah.
get to fight them off. Oh, it's good.
It is very tricky, and a lot of people understand that. And you could, a tournament, that's the reason why I think Warcaster as a tournament scene, I would say most of the scenarios are a narrative feel and a narrative play with a little bit of twist in it.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that because you don't know what you're going to do. You just have to build the best army you can to handle every scenario you can in every situation.
Hmm.
Even if you table your opponent. Sorry.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about a few scenarios that are coming up. But before we do, convention-wise, I know that you've got a
Yes.
lot going on, and you're like super uber rich, powerful, crazy influencer now. Are you hitting anything this year, John?
I don't actually know. So for those of you who have been following the channel, I'm actually in my last 6 weeks in the military, which I'm very excited about.
Woohoo!
After which my wife and I are moving to Alaska, which is going to be most of our year. So if I do make conventions, it's probably just going to be Warfare Weekend this year.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I know.
I always love when you come to Warfare Weekend.
Hoping to get back on the convention circuit next year.
Yeah. I'm definitely, so I won't be hitting Gen Con this year. I'm definitely hitting Adepticon, which is coming up in about 2 months, give or take. I will be checking in on the Warcaster stuff. I know they got a couple of things going on. Not only the Warcaster tournaments, they've got a narrative thing going on, and they got the vehicle combat racing. I can't remember what Travis called it, but
Yes.
you make a vehicle and a certain amount of arc of troops, and you try to get your vehicle from point A to point B. It's kind of like a racing, but it's not a racing.
Hmm.
Best way to describe it, in my opinion, would be pod racing with Tusken Raiders trying to kill you along the way.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. It looks like a little fun. I may participate in that. I won't be participating in the tournaments because I've been asked to come and play some of the narrative War Machine events, and I'm going to be taking my Orgoth to that. So I was like, I think I'm going to go do that. So
There's also, if I remember right, there was a Warcaster narrative advertised there, something about like a train robbery or something.
yes, yeah, it's like a grab train something. So there's going to be a narrative event,
Yeah.
your standard Warcaster tournament, and then the pod racing. We're going to nickname it pod racing. Sorry, Travis.
I don't think it's copyrighted, but fine.
No. And then I'm definitely going to go to Adepticon. It's always my favorite one to go to. Of course, Warfare Weekend. If I didn't show up for that, I'd probably get beat up.
It'd be weird.
It would be weird. And we'll definitely have some stuff at Warcaster for there. Some narrative events and some open tables and etc. like everybody's used to. But that's all the conventions I gonna go to that have Warcaster. I won't be going to Gen Con. It's just too expensive and too many people.
I want to go one of these years. I've never actually been to Gen Con.
I went once, and it was back when teachers were allowed to go into the convention, go into the vendor hall early. And we were allowed an hour early before everybody else because we were teachers. And I went in there, and that was the one and only time. But I mean, it is so packed and so crazy and so expensive. I mean, you have to pay for parking, and it's like, by the time you're done, it's probably like $300 in parking minimum.
Yeah.
And, splitting up with your friends, so it gets really expensive. But hopefully we'll start seeing some more stuff. I'm not sure when models are coming out, but I'm sure we'll see more and more as time goes on.
Yeah.
So, with that said, let's talk about a couple of scenarios. You have picked 2 scenarios
Yes.
because you are the man. And what's our first scenario that we're going to talk about?
So I picked 2 scenarios that I like to use specifically for narrative stuff because they are weird.
Mm-hmm.
And when you play narrative, I mean, you're not as worried about the specific balance of the scenario. It gives you freedom to do weird stuff. So on the skirmish front, we got 1 skirmish, 1 primary. The skirmish front is a scenario called Unconventional Warfare. It's the 6th scenario in the Thousand World Sourcebook. And essentially the way this thing works, there's 1 objective in the center of the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 4 objectives, each on a corner of the board.
Yep.
And if you control one of these corner objectives, then at the end of your turn, you can just take one of your units and teleport them to the opposite corner.
Yep.
And this is a monstrous scenario for a very specific reason, because when we play Warcaster, and one of the things I love about Warcaster is not a game of attrition.
No.
Because everything comes back.
Everything comes back except for characters and character vehicles.
Yeah. So what it's really about is it's about board control.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where can I exert my influence in all this? And this mission takes that whole idea of like, okay, understanding of where you control on the board and just completely scrambles it up. Because all of a sudden I can go from one corner of the board to the other one. My opponent can come right back through that same gate and end up in my business. So it's a really, using that word we used earlier, dynamic. It's an incredibly dynamic scenario that screws with the way that you look at the board in terms of who controls it.
So, from what I'm understanding, I've got the scenario here looking at it. If I control one corner, I can teleport to the other corner. Do I have to control the opposite corner?
Nope. And that's my favorite part. You can just show up right up in their business and contest that objective as soon as you arrive.
So, whenever I'm there, and say my opponent has a unit or model on the other end, can they block off teleportation?
They can't turn it off. No. If they surround it, you could feasibly just sort of body block the whole thing.
Correct.
But no. Now, once you appear, you don't miraculously hold that objective. You now have to fight for it. But it's a way to teleport your units across to the opposite corner. And what that means is once you control 2 of the gates that are linked together, you have this amazing little express train hyperloop to cross your stuff from one end of the board to the other. Just stupid fast if you can control the opposing corners.
So, coming from a background of tournament play, if I were to stop you from teleporting in, I would have to surround it and surround it pretty well.
Yeah, you probably need maybe 2 squads.
Okay. Yeah, because one wouldn't do it because you could just go to the other side of it.
Yeah.
Because it says that when you teleport, you have to be teleporting, I think it's 2 inches of that, and then everybody teleports 2 inches from that model. So you would have to block off, you would have to surround the entire thing, which would mean you're committing a bunch of stuff to that one objective.
To one objective, yeah.
Which then leaves the middle objective open. Because even though you can teleport and you can move, that middle objective is still a scoring point.
Yep.
Now, I do like it because it is like this, surprise, I'm here.
Yeah. Actually, I used this scenario in both of the Jericho Reach seasons. The finale of season 1 and season 2 was both this scenario because I just love it that much.
Yeah, because, I mean, you could have some really good fun with this because is it only squads that can be teleported or anything?
It's unit, so it's everything.
It's everything. So teleporting anything around the battlefield is really, really powerful, as we've seen with positioning gates and putting things up and, moving things around. So this scenario is pretty straightforward. There's nothing, crazy about it. It's just remember, if you control one corner, you can teleport to the opposite corner.
Yeah.
Cool thing is, when you do this, you could actually set up a unit to go, oh, you teleported in? Here, eat lead.
Yes. you can make it a complete trap on the other end of the thing.
Correct.
But what I've also done is summoned a Morning Star and through the gate on the
Teleporter?
Yeah. Well, teleport objective things immediately because it doesn't take an action. So you can throw something like that through to the other corner and then activate on your next turn.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the thing is there is an offensive and a defensive to this. You've got to watch your corners. And, with line of sight being 360 in this game, it's a lot easier. You don't have to face or anything. But you've got to be careful because if you teleport in and you've got, a unit of heavy hitters, they're going to blow away whatever comes through there.
Absolutely.
So you got to be careful, like, oh, I can teleport, but I'm going to eat hot laser when I come through the other side. So do you really want to waste it? But you might, because you're forcing your opponent to shoot that direction instead of shooting the center scenario.
Yeah.
Or
so
going for the
it's one
center
of those things where it takes a relatively simple concept and presents it in a really interesting way.
Yeah. So being a skirmish mission, how many, remind people how many models or arc are we talking about?
You're going to call me out after I've been writing War Machine scenarios for 2 months.
Yep.
I believe it is 8-1 as the minimum, up to 11-2.
Okay. So, I mean,
Don't quote me on that because I don't actually know.
Yeah. Or you're off the air, you'll be like, God damn it, Gonzo. But, I mean, here's the thing. You have to play tactical because you have to protect your rear or protect your corners, but also try to score the points. Because scoring is done at the end of the pulse rounds, and 1 for scoring any objective the first pulse round, and then 2 objective in the second pulse round, and then 3, so on and so forth, and third and fourth, etc. I think what would make this even a really better scenario is that the center objective scored 1 more additional.
Yes. What I've mostly found is we tend to ignore the middle objective.
Correct. I can see that happening. I would like, I don't care. But if you were to add the center objective scores you 1 more, then that would be, it would kind of force and push people to go, oh crap, my opponent's going for the center. I can't let him have the center because the center gives them 2 while I will only get 1 from the corners.
Yeah. I will say, though, if you park a Warjack on the center objective, so far from my experience, he typically gets left alone because everyone's fighting over the corner objectives and nobody wants to devote that much firepower.
Correct. But, like I said, if you raised it by 1 point, then you would have Warjacks going, yeah, we're gonna scramble.
Yeah. Okay, your WarDice house rule of the day.
Which is okay, but see, that's the thing. That's something that could be a good feedback. That's a perfect way to describe the feedback, because if you're looking at a scenario and you're playing it and one of the objectives is completely ignored, that's something that needs to be brought up.
Yep.
And if this center scenario is completely ignored, why is it there?
Right. So.
But if you put it like it scores 1 additional, okay. Now we're fighting the entire board, not just the corners. Type thing. So that's something that, look at. So you can add that to your packet, write that note down, send it in. Type stuff. So that was the one, and that's a very simple, straightforward scenario. There's not a lot of setup. There's not a lot of rules. It's just, there it is.
Yep. It takes a key, like a core concept of the game and tweaks it just a little bit, and you get this whole cool scenario out of it.
Yeah. So our second one is...
Second one is Cascading Failure. This is the second primary mission in the Thousand Worlds sourcebook, which I will completely plug here for a second because this book is amazing.
So I understand why people can't do books very often, just because of cost of paper and everything's being printed. But this is one of the best books they've ever made.
Yeah. Oh yeah, hands down.
The Thousand World book is amazing. So if you haven't gotten one, make sure you go pick one up.
Yes. So it's got the primary mission Cascading Failure in here. This is one of those, very much like the scenario we just talked about. If you look at it, it looks very, very simple until it's not. But it's doing that in a really, really fun way. So there's essentially a ring of 6 objectives. Squads only, I believe, for securing them.
Yes, only squads can secure the objectives.
Every time you score one of them, you roll an action dice. And there's 2 tables of all the things that could possibly go wrong because you just ran up and put your foot on an alien artifact.
This is one that you wouldn't want to see in a tournament setting because you know that this is all random bullshit that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's a very fun scenario.
This is like if I had to pick one scenario in the whole book to explain what we're talking about when we talk about narrative stuff being fun but not necessarily balanced, this is what I'm talking about.
Correct.
So you've got a minor, essentially you roll an action dice. So there's a 1 in 3 chance that you'll get 1 strike. And that gives you minor destruction table. So it's everything from you wipe off arc from a unit, the unit catches fire, there's an earthquake and stuff gets the lockdown effect. Just really cool stuff. You roll a super strike, you get the catastrophic failure table. And I'm a big fan of anything that involves the word catastrophic.
Yeah.
And this is things like you increase the deployment cost of all units by 1 for the rest of this pulse round as the void is just rippled and torn and messed with. All the way down to Rift. So your opponent can immediately place a Void Gate up to 3 arc anywhere within 5 inches of that objective. Like the Void just tears open and your opponent's like, oh, well, I'll just throw some guys here.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just...
the one thing about this is even though you're having the destruction and people die or whatever, Warcaster lends to this because I don't care if a unit dies. I'm going to bring it back.
It's an inconvenience and not a disaster.
Yeah, unlike in War Machine, if your unit's dead, they're just gone. Here, you're like, okay, I'll kill them on purpose so I can bring them back to full.
Have done that, yes.
Yes. So I wanted to talk about the minor destruction table. They're inconveniences, nothing too bad, nothing too hard. But the catastrophic one, there's some really cool and fun things. You're destroying the permanent objective from the table. Okay, crap. Now I've got to go somewhere else. So you're definitely moving. Increasing the deployment cost of all units by 1 for the rest of the pulse round. Holy crap.
Yeah.
And then you put like a model next to it that also increases it by 1. Yeah, that's crazy.
You're not summoning crap this turn.
No. Oh, this 1 unit now costs 2, potentially 3. It's pretty powerful. And also, I think this chronomorphic warp, remove activation tokens from all units within 2 inches of it. That was just scored. Place activation tokens on all units within 2 inches of the alien node permanent objective that was just scored but did not previously have activation tokens. So it's like, hey, I'm free to do stuff. Now I'm not. Or your other models are not.
Yeah, it's like everybody who has gone gets to go again. Everyone who hasn't gone yet is suddenly locked down. It's messing with the key concept of the game in just a really fun sort of tweak way.
Yeah. The eruption one, roll to see if you guys die. That's
Yeah.
pretty much, if you have a single wound infantry type thing, yeah, you're just rolling to see if they die. And then Hand of Entropy. Immediately make rolls to resolve all continuous effects on models within 5 inches. Okay, that's kind of cool.
That one can be either helpful or dirty, depending on if you have a system failure or if you're on fire.
Yeah. Correct. And then, of course, we talked about Rift, where you get to place a gate and 3 arc on it. Okay, now here's my question. Does that 3 arc come from my pool, or is it free 3 arc?
Oh, it would have to come from your pool, because otherwise that would get into the economy stuff.
Yeah, which it would be breaking the rule if it was free 3 arc.
Yeah. And that's one thing, spoiler alert, that you will see in scenarios that I write a lot is messing around with arc is really, really fun. Because it's this universal buff, debuff resource for everybody. It's fun to mess with it.
And see, this is a scenario that I was saying that you don't know what the hell's going to happen. You're like, all right, we've done everything. We're sitting. Cross your fingers we don't all die. Because it's not only you, it's everybody else. Because you have to score the objectives whether you like it or not. Or you're just, letting your opponent walk away with the game.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to be scoring, you've got to roll on this tables.
Yep. And at the end of the day, we are playing a dice game. We don't want certainty. We want just the right amount of uncertainty.
Yeah. Because I will tell you right now that if I'm playing and, one of my units gets completely wiped out, okay, say levy, no big deal. I can bring them out next round. But if I get to put out a free gate with 3 arc, I'm like, oh, crap.
Mm-hmm.
1, I've got to have the arc available. 2, if I get to do it, that changes up the battlefield because that's a whole nother unit I get out essentially for free, intents and purposes.
Yeah. That can change the direction of the game with a dice roll right there.
Yeah, 100%. Scoring victory conditions, the most after most points wins the game at the end of the round. I think this scenario, while it's really cool and really fun, I personally would play a lot of troops into this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because vehicles, going through and hitting and, whatever are not, they can't score. So the vehicle is just doing nothing but destructions. But the squads, I would play my squads. I would play my AC in this in a heartbeat.
I would do ISA and just spam paladins.
Yeah. And just throw them out there.
And it would be awesome.
Yeah. And this is another thing that I like about Warcaster is you're building a list that can take on everything. And this is a mission, while a lot of our missions say only squads or, only certain things can do certain stuff in this, this is what you have to be prepared for. You have to be prepared that you're mostly taking squads or putting squads on the board. Sure, you're probably going to put, one jack or a vehicle to help destroy things. But if you want to win this, you've got 6 objectives. You're going to need squads like crazy.
Yeah. And it's cool because it encourages you to get out there and trigger those rolls and start rolling the dice and see what happens. It encourages chaos.
Yeah. And you have to. I mean, like I said, sure you want to win, but if you sit back and let your opponent just grab all of these, it's game over for you. You have to trigger the randomness.
Yeah. I want that t-shirt now. I encourage chaos.
With the new WarBuddies tagline.
Yeah.
We encourage chaos.
Everybody watch the WarBuddies merch store. We're making new shirts.
But I mean, this is another scenario, like I said, that a lot of tournament style players would frown down upon because there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great scenario because sure, there's no guarantee, but Warcaster is very forgiving when things like stuff like this dies, because the recursion mechanic of it, which makes the game very unique. You're like, I don't care if you kill that unit off. Please kill that unit off so I can bring something else in, or I can reposition that entire unit somewhere else.
Yeah.
So this right here, I think would be a whole lot of fun, even in a tournament type setting, because you're like, because you set this down and they tell you scenario, and instantly you're going, mother. But you're okay
But
with it because of the mechanics of the game.
yeah, and it's one of those certainly like if I sit down with buddies and they're like, "Hey, let's just play a casual game and have some fun." This is the kind of scenario that I'll reach for immediately.
Oh yeah, if we're having, we get together and we're just playing games and drinking and having pizza and a social game environment, 100% I would rather play this than play like a steamroller scenario.
Yeah, 100%.
This would be something I would 100% want to play because we're not on the clock. We're just drinking beer and eating pizza, and we're just taking things casually. We're sitting around having fun. We're making stupid sound effects, even though I make them when I'm playing in the steamroller.
That's the best time to make them. Are you kidding me?
I had an opponent get upset with me when I was marching around and I was making shooting noises and I missed and stuff, and he gave me a dirty look. I'm like, dude, I'm a 50-year-old man pushing little plastic miniatures across the board.
Like a boss.
I'm gonna have fun with this, whether you like it or not. And I'll make stupid stuff and everything. But I mean, this is like a scenario that definitely very much is like play at the game store. Hey guys, let's get together and play at the game store and let's show this off. And I 100% encourage everybody to get out of the basements, go play at a game store.
Yeah.
Go show the game off at a game store. I'm always going to tell people to go play at the game store and do it during peak hours when everybody can see it, because this is how you build your meta.
Yeah, it is a visually gorgeous game.
Oh, yeah. With all the terrain and everything being set up and the models, 100% I'd suggest going, because I will tell you right now, there are many a times that I have been to a game store and I hear people having fun and making stupid noises and whatever, and I'll go over there and go, what the hell are y'all playing?
Yeah.
What's so fun? And stuff. So, especially when you're like, crap, and you're having a good time. So this one would be very, very good to put on the table at a game store.
Mm-hmm.
Type thing. What else? We got through those. I mean, so before we go any further, we are going to be having more podcasts. We're trying to balance our work, life, and fun type stuff, because we also have jobs outside of everything else we do.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. If gotta pay, gotta have the money to pay for the models. One of the things we're going to be talking about is setting up for convention stuff. And running things at a convention. Jonathan got a crash course in that last year.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for, a while. Although mine is more background and behind the scenes stuff, but I have run quite a few tournaments, and quite a few things as, like steamrollers and smaller events. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going to be doing it. We're definitely going to go over more missions. We're going to try to do like 2 missions per podcast. And Jonathan gets to pick them and I get to look at them. Eventually we will go over like race mode, and other things, to play, because I think race mode is still something that people don't play a lot or have played, but it is a cool concept. Yeah. When things come out, we will definitely do reviews of things when they come out, but only after they come out. And we will definitely talk about it. Guys, also, if you're wanting more information and you're wanting more things, make sure reach out to myself or Jonathan and say, hey, guys, can you cover XYZ? More than happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
How often you plan on this? Well, we plan on every other week type thing. Gives us time to plan and get things going. But we appreciate, and it was nice to hear that people are like, hey, where's WarDice? And we're like, busy.
It's okay. We missed you guys too.
Yeah, we Jonathan and I get to do this, and it's just a ton of fun because we get to talk about things we're passionate about, things that are having fun, type stuff. But make sure you also, check out the games. Get, restrictions are finally lifting off pretty well. People are getting back in the game store. Go start playing in your game store. Go start hanging out. I know some game stores have a policy that you have to rent the table and stuff. Rent the table, guys. Get together and find out nights that there are more people there. The only way to build your meta is to show your game.
Yeah.
and get people interested. And be very proactive about letting people come in. And when someone walks by, it's like, "Hey, want to check this out? I got models. I got metal crack. I
Yep.
got type thing." Because I really think Warcaster is a solid game. One of the best that Privateer Press has been putting out, rules wise and gameplay wise, and also models. So make sure you pimp it.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to put it.
One of my favorite questions to get, or probably my favorite question to get in the game store is, what are you guys playing?
Yes.
There's just so many branching opportunities that come out of that question where someone's just like, okay, it looks cool, you guys are having fun, like I want to get in on this.
Yes. Because more people, the better. The bigger things come by, people can get to do a lot of cool things. People can have a lot of fun. But just 100% go to the game store. Choose some of these little fun scenarios that you would never play that are whatever. And like this, if you find something that's wrong with it, and I'm not saying wrong, but it could be better, write it in.
Hmm.
Privateer Press is always willing to take feedback on their stuff. Of course, word it correctly. Don't be a douche
Yeah.
type thing. But we plan on doing more content. Plan on getting some more stuff. Um, are we going to see another Jericho Reach?
We will see another Jericho Reach, probably not till late this year after I get settled in Alaska, though.
Okay.
We do have a ton of Warcaster content, and I'm really honored to be part of the design team for it. So keep your eyes open. There is a lot more coming.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff coming. It's just business, business, business.
Yeah.
A lot of the behind the scenes stuff. If you're coming to AdeptCon, look out and say hi to me. I always love to talk to people that listen. It's always a challenge. I might have some prizes that if you come up and say, "Hey, I listen to WarDice, here it is," or I listen to More Than Dice, because that's my other podcast. I might have a little bit of swag for somebody, but don't know
For
yet.
chance.
I always usually give stuff away. I always have swag stuff in my bag, and I just give it away. I'm like, "Oh, here you go, here you go, here you go."
It's actually
Types.
really impressive. He's got like Mary Poppins pockets. It's amazing.
I always try to give things out, and it's nice because, like I said, there was one time I went to Adepticon and I'm standing in line just talking to my friends, and this lady behind me she goes, "I recognize your voice," and I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "Do you do podcasts?" And I says, "I do." She goes, "Wait a minute, you're Gonzo from More Than Dice," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I listen to you," and then there is nothing cooler than hearing from a fan in saying that they listen to us. So don't ever think that you can't come up to somebody and say, "Hey, I listen to you and I enjoy your stuff," because it gives them a boost and provides more content and give more stuff out. So always do that. Of course, Jonathan's more prevalent on the social medias. The whatchamacallit, the Discords. I'm not much of a Discord person,
Yes, if you haven't
but
joined the Warcaster Discord, we are very active on there, trading all sorts of stuff.
yeah. And there's also some new podcasts and new community people have come out. That since we started, we've actually people have been encouraged to do their own stuff. Do you know of any of the ones that have been that you want to shout out?
Yes, huge shout out to Arcane Synthesis. So
Yes.
it's sort of a blog. It's a series of articles. You can find them on the Warcaster Facebook page. You can find them on the Warcaster Discord. It's like different creators. I've done a couple things for them, just all sorts of different topics and different perspective. It's a really cool series.
Which is good because we encourage people to bring anything out. This is not a competition. This is not about a popularity. This is about you're bringing something cool out. We'll give you a shout out. We'll do something because anything that makes the community better is better for everybody.
Yep.
So, and if you want us to shout out to people, or if you want to come on, Jonathan and I are always welcome to special guests. I mean, there's not a problem with that. You just got to figure out a schedule.
Yeah.
And you want to come in and talk about stuff, we are more than happy to. So,
Yeah.
I think that's the show.
That's about it. We missed you guys. We're glad to be back.
Yep. For WarDice and More Than Dice, I'm Gonzo.
And I'm John from War Budgies.
Let's play that beautiful music.